And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Real Talks. I'm your host, David Steele, where every movie I talk about, new or old, ignites a conversation. So join me as I turn back the clock on the cinematic journey, as I turn back the clock on the cinematic journey and take you back and talk about some of the greatest films of all time. So I'd like to welcome everybody back to a little series I've been doing on the channel. It's called Marvel March. So for the whole month, I've been talking about Marvel films. Okay, we started with Iron Man, Infinity War, and so today, just as a you know double feature, what we're going to do is talk about a little movie called Infinity War. You might have heard of it, I think. Anyways, guys, so we are going to talk about Infinity War, and so um, so yeah, we're going to talk about Infinity War, and I'm sorry, we're going to talk about Endgame rather. And so, just off the top, I wanted to show you guys like the opening graphics. So this is just as the movie opens, right? Um, Tells you. I mean, so I'm going to backtrack for anybody who hasn't seen Infinity War real quick. So essentially, what ends up happening is that the heroes lose. So we get a we get all the heroes back, okay, but in different ways. Okay. So as we begin, though, before we even get started with even the movie, because this is a 3 hour movie, and once again, I'm not going to run through beat by beat because I'm not going to bore you guys. Number one, I think you've seen the film, and if you haven't, okay, spoiler alerts. This is going to be spoil filled, okay. But number two, I want to talk about really the impact of what kind of movie this was, okay. So this holds some absolute jaw-dropping records. Okay. Some of which I don't think will ever be touched. Okay. First and foremost, okay, this movie made a whopping $357 million opening weekend. I didn't stutter, guys. $357 million. That's incredible. Now, backtrack a little bit. Let's go back to 2018. Okay. The previous, so that was just domestic. For the weekend, for 3 or 4 days, $1.2 billion. Thank you. $1.2 billion. Now, to actually put this in perspective for you guys, that figure was the highest, the biggest, and the largest in box office history. Previously, okay, Infinity War held that record with $640 million worldwide, and it opened to $257.6 million domestic. Now, think about it. That's $100 million more. $100 million more than its predecessor. That's incredible. It also reached the $1 billion mark faster than any other film in history. Okay, and there have been a lot of $1 billion films. Okay, I mean we had Top Gun Maverick, we had Oppenheimer nearly got there. We've got Barbie that hit it, Super Mario. This reached $1 billion faster than any other film in history up to that point. It took 5 days. That's right, 5 days. The previous record was 11 days with Infinity War. With just one weekend on the books, okay? Think about this. With just one weekend on the books back in 2019, this was the 18th largest grossing film of all time. That's right. Up until 2019, okay, this was the 18th highest grossing film of all time. And only one of 3 or 4 films to date that's ever made $2 billion. Okay. So it's actually placed today in today's record books is the second highest grossing feature film of all time, with 2.799, call it $2.8 billion. There's only been one film to make more money, and that's Avatar. Think about that. That's incredible. Now, That's just, those are the numbers. Okay. Let's now dive into the actual film because that's what you guys are here for. So there were two things that I really noticed. So once again, let's go back to the opening thing there. Okay. I thought that was pretty cool in the way they did that, and it was just really well done. Um, Once again, the poster really kind of says it all, right? We have all of our heroes. Okay, we've got, obviously Thanos in the background, and mind you guys, that there's something to be said about um, how posters are made. Okay, I mean, if you take a look at something like Gone with the Wind, for example, okay, you look at Gone with the Wind, see what they did with Empire Strikes Back, right? It's nearly the same identical poster, right? Um, so placement in posters is very important. So once again, we have Thanos in the background, okay? Because let's face it, he is only in the third. He's in bits and pieces of the film, but he's only really in the third act of the film. Okay, he has a couple scenes here or there, but his major party, his major thing, is in the third act. Which, by the way, guys, if you take a look at the other, let's go back to the Infinity War. We see him from the first frame. Okay, as I said in the Infinity War uh, retrospective, if you will, that Infinity War was his party. It was his movie. He was the glue. Everybody else just came together. Subsequently, this one, okay, um, he's only in the third act. So there's something to be said about that. Okay. Then, you have Cap in the middle, okay, because he is another central piece of the puzzle. You have Tony up there, central. And then you have all these other supporting characters all the way around. So that was something to be said. Okay, so let's dive into what is important. So there were the two major things, okay? There were two major elements I discovered watching this film, and I had seen this 3 or 4 times, and it kind of changed my perspective on the way it's done, okay? The first is the character arcs, because if we go back to Infinity War, all these arcs aren't complete, okay? Because what the Russos did was, and as I stated in the Infinity War retrospective, is they ended it on, well, first of all, they said it was a tragedy, which it is, because they watched everybody go to dust. But more importantly, okay, they ended it on, anybody who's a script writer will appreciate this. Okay. They ended it, there was a plot point out there called the point of no return. Now, this is in every feature film, okay, whether it's in James Bond or Harry Potter or whatever, okay, any major action adventure film, okay. It is the plot point in which you think your hero is going to lose and they're not going to be victorious. However, they come through. This is what the Russos did. They took a major, major risk on this. They ended it on the plot point of the point of no return. So when everybody turns to dust, okay, and that's when you see Cap there sitting on the ground with everybody around him, and he says, "Oh God." What ends up happening is he won. Thanos won. What was the next shot you saw? You saw the garden, which, by the way, was a little Easter egg in there with the scarecrow. Okay, but you just sit him there, sitting. He sits there on his steps, and he gives that look of satisfaction, and that's how the film ends. So when we see this to begin, the first act, okay, the first half of the first act is really the end of Infinity War. So something I'm going to be talking about throughout one of the major plot points, and when we talk about each character, is um, the character arcs. Okay, so character arcs are extremely important to everybody. Okay, and that being said, we in the very beginning, okay, we're going to touch upon a character that we didn't see in Infinity War. Okay, and that was Hawkeye. Okay, so if anybody remembers, okay, from Civil War, okay, there was that scene with Ross, and Nat says to him, "Well, what if we don't like your decision? Then you retire." Well, that's what Clint did. He retired. So when the snap happens, okay, we see, we see him shooting arrows with his daughter, and the next shot you see, literally, they're gone. They are all gone. And Clint is trying to figure out where and what's going on. Okay. So that being said, then, okay, we fast forward. We fast forward 5 years. So it's 5 years later. Society has moved on. Okay. It's different because 50% of the people are gone. Okay. So, I mean, it's a really somber, sad type of thing, sad type of society. So then you see, what you have. So this is a support group. And actually, by the way, Joe Russo actually makes a cameo here as the person who's talking. And this is the first time you see. Where did they go now that they're gone? So they're still struggling. 5 years later, they're having support groups and struggling to try and find out what to do, pick up the pieces. Okay. You can see this in like that shot there, it's completely gray. Okay. That is an indicator of not only the time, but the of who they are. Okay. Um, so there's a lot to be said there. Okay. Um, let's let's move on. So it starts with our heroes. Okay, our core three of heroes. Okay. Um, so that is going to be Tony, Cap, and Thor. And those are really the ones I'm going to run down for you. Okay. Um, that we do have some other we do have other arcs that I'm going to touch upon as well. Okay. So as we all know, at the end of Infinity War, okay, Tony was the one that watched Peter turn to dust. Okay. Now, anybody who, you've seen Infinity War, so you know at the beginning of the film, Pepper and Cody are actually talking about having a little girl and a child. And what Tony has done throughout the course of the MCU is he's mentored Peter. Okay. Because he was this guy that got bit. He was Spider-Man, but he didn't know how. He basically trained him to be a hero. So whether it's in Civil War, where he goes to get him, and then he gives him a new suit, or Homecoming, where he's trying to, walk him through how to fight a supervillain like Vulture, okay, or whatever, and then he goes to Titan with everybody, okay, Doctor Strange and everybody. When he dies, okay, when he gets snapped away, Tony's broken. He's a broken person. Okay. And what does he say right when so Captain Marvel, okay, who we see a couple of times, okay, actually saves Nebula and Tony. What does he say though? What were the first words that come out of his mouth once they land? I lost the kid. That's how badly he was broken because he really loved Peter as a son. Okay, even though it wasn't his child. So the first thing we see is in the third act, when that magical moment happens, and I'll get to that in a couple minutes. When we see Peter come back and they're you see this battle going on around him. I just love how there's that moment between Peter and Tony. And Peter's like, it's like I passed out. Next time I think I knew I was Doctor Strange was there, and then he just gives him a hug. He's like, oh, this is nice. But it's the comedy of it, right? And it's relief for Tony. Okay. And so when he's talking there's some other really charming moments. Okay. Speaking of his daughter, okay, there's a moment that gets me every time. And for everybody that has kids, okay, I don't personally, but I've seen this 4 or 5 times and I love it. You just can't help but love Morgan, right? she's got the little Iron Man mask, she's playing with, and I mean, just adorable. But the whole "I love you 3000," right? That in itself was magical, and so that really, was really charming and really cute. Um, but that's not all. Okay, so we see. Okay, so we see Tony have other moments too. Okay, and one of the other moments, okay, is so when they go to the time heist. Okay, right before. So as I said, the first act. Okay, the first half of the first act was the end of Endgame or the end of Infinity War. The second act of Act One, okay, is really the start of the movie. So this is before the quote time heist, okay. And one thing that Peter, so that he goes back in, and that night, of course, he discovers time travel, and he's like, and I love it. He says, he's going to run the permutation one more time, and it works. And he says, "Oh shit!" And Morgan's sitting right. It's just genius, right? It's genius how they get the comedy. Okay, so that's when he takes her to bed, you know, and then they talk. Pepper and him talk. But one of the other major things that he was able to do, okay, because remember, guys, this stems all the way back to this was the genius of Marvel in the first three phases, okay, is they were able to put this all together, okay, not in linear organization, but also just making it work. This goes stems all the way back to Civil War, right? And he gets the phone, okay, and we hear Cap's letter. He's like, "I'm sorry, I should have told you. I don't think it was gonna, I didn't think it was gonna ease the pain." And then at the beginning of Infinity War, okay, when they're all in Doctor Strange's home and they're talking, and he's like, "Well, who's the one person you could call?" He's like, "Steve Rogers." And they basically kind of walk you through and hold your hand. And he's like, and he's talking to Bruce, and he says, "Well, call him." He's like, "Oh, we're not on speaking terms." He's like, "Oh, I haven't caught up with you in a spell. The Avengers broke up." What? Like the Beatles? I mean, but the point is he wasn't on speaking terms. So the first time we see Thanos's, goons and they're attacking New York, okay, um, the aftermath, Bruce picks up the phone. So what fast forward, okay? So here we are. They discover time travel. Nat, Scott, and Cap have come to his home. He has his family. He has everything he's going to do, but he still hasn't made a reconcile with Steve. So he talks with Pepper and says, "I know you can't put this away." So what does he do? He goes and he helps everybody. Okay. And he's like, "Look, let bygones be bygones. Okay. We're past all that." He hands the shield back. I love what he says when he hands the shield back to Cap. He's like, "I got to get this out before Morgan uses this as a sled." You know, but the point is, like, he reconciles me. He makes it better. And there's even a scene in the second act where something goes wrong. And he's like, "Do you trust me?" And Steve says, "I do." So they reconcile. The second half of Act One is really getting the gang back together. Okay. So later on, there's going to be another scene that I'm going to talk about that's really going to help his arc. But I want to move on to another key power character here, and that's Thor. So everybody who remembers Thor, okay, and what happened to him, okay, he at the end of Infinity War could not stop Thanos, okay, and what ended up happening was at that point, What ended up at that point is that he basically, because he couldn't kill Thanos, okay, he was able to do the snap. And when he did the snap, of course, it wiped out 50% of the people. And that being said, he was a mess. Okay. He went into some serious uh, grief. Um, and what ends up happening, okay, is that he doesn't want to deal with the trauma. And so at that point, okay, Yuki says here, I was Team Cap. Yeah. I mean, even this, so once again, I don't have it with me, okay, but if you take a look at any of the Civil War um, posters, it's done genius, right? I mean, this is Endgame, but it's done really genius. And that is, you've got one row of heroes on one side and one row of heroes on the other side. And I remember when that first trailer, there is a formula to trailer, guys, believe it or not. Okay. What you want, okay, especially Marvel perfected this to a T. What you want is, especially in that first trailer, right? You want to give a little bit of action. You want to get the crowd interested. You want to say having people talk about it. But it's the last 15 seconds. Okay? It's the last 15 seconds. So what ends up happening is what happens in the last 15 seconds? You see Spider-Man flip out, you see the web. Under Rose flips over, he's like, hey guys, people lost it. Because they went, oh no, they're going to team up with Sony. Because Spider-Man had been a Sony character for years and still is, but they're just borrowing them. That day, that next day, the trailer, it was all about Spider-Man. And yes, you had Team Cap and you had Team Iron Man, but that was what the main thing was. So Deadpool says, "I'm Team Iron Man all the way." Yeah, I mean it's one way or the other. But getting back to what I was saying, okay, so when this goes all the way back, let's talk about this because what you're seeing in this film is closure of a lot of different arcs. Okay, we're seeing it with the reconcile with Tony and Cap. Okay, we're going to be seeing it here. So when Thor, of course, can't prevent the snap, right? This is what happens in the first 10 minutes. He kills him. And he says, you know, he decapitates him. And he says, Rocket's there, standing there, befuddled. He's like, what'd you do? He's like, I went for the head. And he walks out in utter relief because he couldn't do it. So, that being said, he goes into a deep, deep depression. Okay. And that's something that isn't taken lightly. And so, the next time you see Thor, okay, he's an alcoholic. So, Hulk and Rocket try to go and talk him into coming back. And he's in no shape, right? He's in absolutely no shape to do it. So we see him as the movie goes along, and his arc gets a little deeper. And what ends up happening, okay, is everybody is able to make amends. Everybody is able to make amends, and they're able to um, really finish. Thank you so much, Dadpool. So let me got to show some love to Dave and all the hard work he puts into making these videos. It's not easy. Keep killing him, man. Let's love. Thank you very much, Deadpool. Thank you very much. I try, and I want to say something right now because he's been with me. I gotta take this off and put this full screen. Um, thank you very much, first and foremost, for that. Moreover than that, I want to apologize to you guys because, as I said, and I always, I basically one thing I do is I'm working. This is a side hustle for me. I feel horrible. Like the first month, I got everything going, but I do feel horrible. I've been working for the past 4 or 5 days. On my lunch break, I have been sitting down and watching these movies, and I've got all, can't really tell here, but I've got all these notes, okay? And I've got a whole script here I'm going off of. And I really want to, I know you guys look forward to these videos, and part of it's my fault. I got sloppy and I didn't get ahead of it. But I wanted to do this, and I continue. I want to do this for you guys, and I'm not putting out as many videos as possible. And as the weeks go along, thank you very much for becoming a YouTube member. That's much obliged. Um, but I wanted to say that I want to give you guys the very best content. Okay. And hey, keep up the good work. Thank you very much. Thank you guys. I appreciate it very much. I'm not able to put out as much content as I would like. I have a ton of stuff. Like I have, the Avengers coming up. I have Guardians of the Galaxy. I have a whole list. No Way Home. I want to finish all of these, okay? All of these videos for you guys by the end of the month. I've already got April planned out, okay? And you guys are good. So I'll tell you right now, the perfect movie of April is going to be The Departed, Martin Scorsese's 2008 Best Picture winner. And I've got Collateral coming up. I've got Draft Day coming up. I have I'm going to end up doing one of the like 1984 movies, like The Karate Kid or The Terminator. I have all mapped out. So I want to let you guys know that I'm putting these out as fast as I can. And guys, I still have I have so many ideas for anatomy of a movie. Okay, the first one I want to do is Heat. Okay, and it's gonna be the coffee shop scene. Okay, and I'm gonna actually break down the coffee shop scene in detail because what Michael Mann does there is it's a genius thing. But I want to do an Oppenheimer anatomy of a movie. I have so many different things I want to do for you guys. I actually want to do a video for I actually want to do a video for you guys on all the souvenir collectors things I have. So I have like 9 of them. So I want to show you all those. So there's so much content I have I want to do. And when you guys support me like this, it warms my heart because I know that I'm still trying to get this going. And with you guys' support, and this is why I always say it, it's just thank you so much. Thank you so much. The anatomy of a YouTuber. Yeah. I mean, eventually what I would like to do is I would like to show you guys the behind the scenes, okay, of what goes into, because you got to understand something, guys. Every movie that I'm doing for a retrospective, I'm not just going on IMDb and saying, oh, this is this. I'm actually sitting down, like I said, scene by scene. And when I see things, and then I write a script out. So I watch the movie, I pause it, I'll write a couple notes. Then what I'll do is write a script. I have a whole script here. Yeah, you guys can go on script. But seriously, I have a whole script here talking about everything. Okay, so I'm sitting down and writing that. Then I go get the pictures. Okay, and these slides that you see, okay, these are on the internet. Or actually, they're on IMDb. I mean, but I'm turning them into PDFs, and then I have them all ready for you guys to go. So that way, when you're talking to you, you just don't see this. Because I know a lot of people okay? That's like this green screen. Okay? This, by the way, this is not my home. I wish it were, but this is not my home. Okay? One thing I learned early on was people don't want to see somebody's bedroom. Okay? Went out, got a $25 green screen from Amazon. So this looks halfway appealing. So I understand it's a learning process. I understand it's building, and you guys are just absolute gems. And I want to thank every single one of you, even if you pop in here for a couple of minutes and then leave, okay? I at least check out. By the way, I'll say one thing. If I can't convince you to become a member, at least check out the trailer, okay? If he can't do it, then I don't know what we're lost. Okay, but yeah. So seriously, thank you for all the support. I just it means the world to me, and yeah, and that's the biggest thing. I want this channel to grow. I want this to get on as many eyeballs as possible, and this is why I love movies. This is why I love giving you guys the best content I can. So I'm sorry, guys. I just had to say that. I didn't say it. I haven't said it earlier. So thank you. Um, okay, where was I? But seriously, so the two things that really mattered for this movie, okay, were character arcs. And that all being said, okay, we do see Thor go through a major change because he couldn't take care of it in the end of Infinity War. Like I said, he does it in the beginning of Endgame. And he says, I went for the head. And when he does that, he goes into a deep, deep depression. Okay. And he becomes an alcoholic. And when Rocket and Hulk try to go catch him, so the second half of the first act is basically getting the team together. Okay. That being said, okay, um, that being said, something really changes him. Okay. So when the time heist happens, okay, he's able to then turn around and have a conversation with his mother. And that really, he learned a valuable lesson doing that. This is the day she's going to die, by the way. Okay. So they're going back to get the stone that Jane has. And he really learns a valuable lesson, and we see him start to change. And this is a momentous event because he never got to say goodbye to his mother. And that being said, he was able to have closure. Okay. And that was a major thing for him. And even when, they get all the stones back, okay, and he says, because he wants to be the one to do the snap. And he's like, I just want to do something good. We see him changing progressively throughout this whole thing until the third act. And so there's somebody else that gets closure. So let's go back, and I want to talk about Tony real quick, okay? Because Tony is another character, major central character that gets closure. So if anybody who remembers going back to watch Civil War, okay, which by the way, guys, I will be doing. I know I'm doing this backwards, but I wanted to do the best one for you guys in March, okay? So as we go back in Civil War, okay, even what ends up happening is we see him have that apparatus, okay, and we see that um, he's actually able to speak to his parents for the last time. And if you go all the way back to Winter Soldier, another film I'll be doing for you guys, okay. And by the way, guys, if you want to go check it out on the Perfect Movies, I did it a couple years ago, right when the channel started. That was one of the first movies I did. I'm going to be doing it again for Marvel March. That being said, okay, we see how his parents died. So in Civil War, we get to see, okay, we get to see how Tony was able to say goodbye to his father, or what we thought. It was the last time he was going to see him. So when the time heist happens, and okay, there's another key thing that happens. Tony is able to say goodbye to his father. For the longest time, and you can even, guys, you can even go back to Iron Man 2. Okay. Remember the scene in Iron Man 2 when he's going through the stuff to try and figure out how to develop a new element? Okay. And he is trying to figure things out. And he was going through the film reels. And what was the last thing that was on one of the film reels? Howard steps, his father, Howard steps in front of the camera and says, Tony, I want to talk to you for a minute. This is you're not going to be able to understand this now, but I want you to know that I'm building this for you. And it was basically, Stark Enterprises, Stark Expo. He says, I'm building this for you. And my technology limits me at the time of me doing this. but I know that you're going to find a way. And the last thing he says to Tony is this: I know essentially, I know I never got it right, but my greatest creation will always be you. And he's saying, I love you to him. And anybody who's had a relationship with a parent, okay, that has not been able to express love, okay, or gratitude, he was kind of emotional at that point. So when we see what happens to him in Civil War, and we find out that Bucky was responsible for his parents' death, and of course there was that fight, okay, between Cap and Iron Man and Bucky. It was one of those things where it was like, and this, by the way, guys, goes back and stems from what happened in Infinity War and up to Endgame. So when he's able to go back and say goodbye to his parents and his father, he's overjoyed to a certain extent. I mean, he gives his, Tony's Howard's asking, well, I've got a little, my wife is pregnant, meeting with him, okay? How, he's asking, do you have children? He's like, yes. He's like, were you nervous? He's like, of course. He's like, how do you handle it? He's like, a day at a time. You'll figure it out. And he gives him a hug. And he expresses love to him. And I thought that was such a momentous thing that he did, because he was able to not only say goodbye, but I love you. And it really did a great service. So there were so many emotional beats to it. And this, by the way, this is what makes this a good movie. Okay. I mean, I looked at that, like I said, I looked at it in a couple different ways. And this is a really solid film. Just because of all of that. Okay. So now that we have Thor and Tony out of the way, okay, there's one more hero that we have yet to talk about, okay, and that's Cap. Cap is somebody that is obviously the guy, right? And certainly similar to the hug Tony. Yes, very good pick up, Dadpool. Yes, you're absolutely right about that. You're absolutely right about that. So you see Tony, he's able to say goodbye, okay, and he's able to reconcile with people. This is for Tony's arc. This is all about reconciliation, okay, whether it's with his father or whether it's with Peter, okay, or whether it's with you know anybody else. So it's all about reconciliation. So there's one other hero that we have to talk about, and that's Cap. Cap is the one, the guy. He is. I mean, we go back to what I was saying earlier about heroes Cap or Team Cap against Team Iron Man, right? And so Captain America is able to get that happy ending. He's able to get the happy ending he's always wanted. And so it took 11 years, but it was able to be done. And the fact is that he was able to enjoy what he had. And it was great to see, because when he got the stones, right? He got the stones, and he kind of went on a little bit of a journey. And so the next time we see him, this is at the end of the film, we see him as an old man. But he dropped off the stones like he should have, okay? And then he was able to enjoy the rest of his life. So he gets the happy ending he always wanted. That's fantastic, and we all wanted to see that. Okay, so we had a lot of emotional things, but there is. So speaking of side characters, okay, um, Captain Marvel, she was in this in the beginning, and she was in this in the end. Okay, but There was one other real arc that was necessary to talk about, and it's somebody I was speaking about in the beginning. Okay, and it's Hawkeye. So when we see Hawkeye, okay, we see him with his family, and then the snap happens. And then, so this is what we see at the very beginning, okay, and what he actually um, becomes. And so he is, Hawkeye becomes something he never wanted to be, okay? And he goes around and starts killing people. And this is that scene in Japan. And, he wipes the blade off, and Nat's standing there and says, I'm here to, because there's a way to get everybody back. And the first words out of his mouth is, don't give me hope. Don't give me hope, Natalie. And so this is what I'm talking about, bringing everybody in. So they bring him in. They bring Thor back and everything else. So that is the second half of Act One. So the second act itself is the time heist. Now, let's talk about the rest of the movie, because this is where it makes its money. Okay. This is where it makes its money. And without, it's an emotion. Any good film, doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter if it's a drama, okay, or whatever. So this is the act. This is the end of it, really, okay? When they are going to get the Soul Stone on Vormir. Now, Natalie, Natasha rather, okay, and Clint have been around for X amount of years, and even on the plane ride, the ship, they say this is better than Voodoo. They make a reference all the way back to the beginning. And, so they have a little tussle, and then, he basically sacrifices him, or she sacrifices herself for him. And, that's the scene where it says it was supposed to be me down there. Right. And so we think the wrong person, they mourn her loss as they should. And, Tony asks Cap or the group, did she have any family? And he said, yeah, us. So once they get all the stones back, okay, once they get all the stones back, um, the third act is where this makes its money. Okay. The third act is where it makes its money. And boy, what a third act it was. It just was amazing. So there were three major, so emotion. Okay, we were just talking about it. There were three major events, or I shouldn't say events, but the time. Now, I saw this in the theater 3 times. Okay, I saw this in the theater 3 times, and when I did, every single time, I got it just exploded. And so, but every single time I saw this, it erupted. So there's another little linear or full circle moment, okay? And that's when after the wreckage, all three walk out, okay? It's Cap, it's Thor, and it's Iron Man. And Thor says, this is a trap. And he's like, yeah, it's like, I don't care. But if you go back, remember who the three were that were fighting in the Avengers when they didn't really know each other? Cap, Thor, and Iron Man. So once again, you get all these full circle moments. This is one of, so the first emotional, there were three of them, as I said. The first emotional moment on your left. The whole audience exploded. I'm not gonna lie. Anybody who saw this in theaters knows what I'm talking about. It exploded when that happened, right? And then we see all the heroes start to come in. We see all the heroes start to come in. Okay? Black Panther, Spider-Man, the Guardians, Hulk, everybody. The armies from Wakanda, everybody. It really was. It really was goosebumps. You're right. It really was goosebumps. I mean, there are certain moments, and that was just getting it started. Okay? So they're fighting. And I want to just show you something that honestly, and this is all over YouTube. This isn't me doing this. This was from an audience, okay, that saw this for the very first time. Now, you got to remember, guys, this movie is only 6 years old. Watch. Goosebumps. There are certain moments in cinema that you just go, wow, that was it. That was it. That was the moment when you want to talk about full circle moments. That was it. And he lit him up like a Christmas tree. And it was incredible. Every single time I went to see that movie, um, it was the same thing. It was the same reaction. And this is why we're lucky to have cinema because, you know, we just went through a pandemic a few years ago. And a lot of theaters did end up closing. And the fact is, we didn't know if movie theaters like AMC and Regal and Alamo House and everything else were going to stay up. When you watch a movie in a movie theater, okay, in a dark environment, you're having an experience, you're having a memory, and you know the first time you saw Avengers Endgame and who you were with and who if you went to a midnight showing or whatever the case was. So when you get a moment like what I just showed you, it makes it that much more special. And looking back on it, it's just incredible. Um, but, and I'm not going to show the full clip of that, whatever, but what I will say is this that wasn't even it. That wasn't even it, guys. The two words people had been wanting to hear for, I don't know, 11 years. And by the way, guys, they teased this so many times. You remember at the end of Age of Ultron, when Cap steps out, onto the balcony and there's a brand new bunch of Avengers, and then it just cuts to black. Okay? The two words everybody had been longing to hearing for 11 years. Avengers, assemble. And that was it. Every single theater that I was at, every time I watched the movie, people lost it. They lost it. They've lost it because it was done so well. They teased it and teased it and teased it. And this is why when Infinity War did as well as it did, because they only showed Thanos 4 times. And I went over this in the retrospective. They only showed Thanos 4 times in 8 years, 10 years. Okay? No, I'm sorry, 6 years. They only showed him 4 times in 6 years. At the end of the Avengers, in Guardians, when he's having the discussion with Ronan, at the end of Guardians, and then, fine, I'll do it myself. That's it. So when you tease something enough, and you're not going to troll the audience, you're going to get this kind of reaction. And the place blew up. That being said, it exploded. And the on your left, I want to go back to the on your left photo real quick, because here's something to keep in mind, guys. And this is why they're really good. Okay? Because not only was this a callback from Winter Soldier, of course, Sam on your left, right? In the very beginning, when they're, when they're running around the Washington Monument, but how it happened to bring everybody back. Okay, they could have just put it in and it would have been nothing. But to do it and get the emotional pop that you want, that's it. As I said, Thor picking up the hammer, okay, was another major popping moment. Okay, it was incredible, and it got another, you said it right. You said it right. Goosebumps. You absolutely said it right, because these were goosebump moments. And the third one, as it was just brought up, was the Avengers. Assemble. So when you have back to back to back like that, you're just treat, and it's not fan service either. I want to keep that in mind. This isn't fan service, guys. Okay, fan service is putting a character into a movie because they want to see him, or cameos. Like, I'll give you an example. Okay, blanking on his name. The guy from Fantastic Four and Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, Reed Richards. Putting Reed Richards in there, that was fan service. Okay? When you have Patrick Stewart in there, that's fan service. This isn't fan service. This was leading up to this big event, this monumental 11-year blowout event. Okay? Imagine the biggest party you could ever have times 10. That's what this was. Endgame was a movie experience. Nothing will. No, it won't. And that's why, forget about the economics of today. That's why you'll never see a movie do. Go back to what I said at the very beginning, guys. This movie made $357 million opening weekend. Think about that. Think about that for a minute. $357 million opening weekend. I just want to quickly list for you guys the opening box office for the top 10 opening box office for the opening weekend. Okay, what you're talking about. Number 10 was Avengers Infinity War. So that was a sequel. Okay, you got to understand something too. Avengers Age of Ultron was the follow-up to the Avengers, which, by the way, was the first movie to gross $200 million in the only movie to make $100 million its opening weekend. That's number 10, okay? Number 9, you had The Lion King. Number 8, you had Black Panther, okay? Black Panther, $202 million, okay? It went on to make $1 billion. This isn't an anomaly, guys, okay? This is pristine, top-notch, prime Marvel stuff, okay? Number 7, The Avengers, the movie I was just referring to, $207 million. Okay, now here are the top 3. I mean, so you've got 2 Star Wars movies and Jurassic World in the other spots. Number 3, Avengers: Infinity War, $257.6 million. That's the movie I just did. Okay, that's the movie I just did. It ended up grossing totally $678 million total in the United States, over $2 billion. Okay. Number 2, Spider-Man: No Way Home, which I will be doing for later on the rest of Marvel March. Okay, and that had something to do with, we were just coming out of the pandemic. We were just coming off of Endgame. There were a lot of factors there, but it was emotion too. And we wanted to see Spider-Man. That was Spider-Man's final movie in the MCU, we think. And they had to close everything up, and they did it really, really well. Okay. This is a tug of this. There was a tug of war for the highest global box office between Avatar and Endgame. Who's the real champ? Well, I mean, look, Avatar re-released. So, I mean, that's the thing. For me, it's Endgame. Because here's the thing. Avatar re-released to get the number, right? Now, if you have to re-release your film just to become the number 1 of all time, then, we've never seen. And guys, there's a good point by you. Okay, could you imagine? Okay, we're now 15 years in. Could you imagine if Marvel came out and said, "Hey guys, guess what? We're going to re-release Endgame and Infinity War back to back, and you can watch it back to back." Do you know how much money that would make? Think about it. That would blow up. It would sell theaters out. I'm not kidding about that. But to answer your question, I think it's Endgame. That's me personally, because it's never been re-released. There's something to be said about that. The final movie there, okay, is Endgame. 600, I'm sorry, $858 million domestic, $357.5 million opening weekend. That's incredible. That is unbelievable. It made almost, now you say, well, it made $2 billion overseas. Who cares? Think about this. This is going to show you something, okay? I want to just show you this, guys. It made, now this is a pretty steep drop, but you can understand it. So April 26th to 28th, it made 300. That was opening weekend. It blew up for $357 million. The next weekend, it dropped $210 million. That's because everybody saw the movie. That's because everybody saw the movie, right? So usually you want between a 40 and 50% drop, but it still made $147 million its second weekend. That's incredible. That's out of sight. If a film makes $100 million opening weekend today, okay, we're like, wow, that's really good. That made a second weekend. Then, okay, its third weekend, it went on and did $64 million, which some films, that's what people are making today opening weekend. That's what I'm talking about, guys. This was an event. It was like, imagine, if you can, the first time you went to go see Phantom Menace in the theaters. Okay, if you're old enough to remember that. Okay, I went to a midnight showing of Phantom Menace 25 years ago. But imagine the first, because that was an experience. Okay, because it was 16 years after Return of the Jedi, right? Or imagine going to see The Force Awakens. Okay, because it was 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. They're events. This is what movies can give us. But it's an incredible thing to think that. That all being said. But, like I said, when you had those things, okay, and then by the way, those were the three major ones, okay, but there were still some other really quality moments, okay. For me, at least, here's a scene that every single time it came to it, there was a lot of applause. So when they're in the battle, okay, and then Peter Parker, he's holding the Infinity Gauntlet, and Captain Marvel flies down and says, "Hi, I'm Peter." Like, you know, I'm Captain Marvel. I don't know how you're going to get through that. I have help. And then all the female Avengers. You have Gamora. You have Nebula. You have um, you have all these Avengers just step up. That got another rousing applause. And by the way, guys, think back to Infinity War. Remember that scene? That was the same thing with Wanda and Natasha. So it wasn't as many. This definitely got that. And something else I gotta say, speaking of the third act, and I've been talking a lot about the third act lately. The visual effects are amazing. The visual effects are just outstanding here. And I think that's something that is overlooked because a lot of this movie is done. I mean, yes, you had the couple of scenes with the time heist, okay, and those were fantastic, but it wasn't visual effects heavy beyond the third act, right? There is something else to keep in mind too. It was nominated, it didn't win, but it was nominated for visual effects. It was incredible. Um, just so many good things about this. I mean, you have the happy ending, as we talked about. Interestingly enough, and I don't have a picture for this, but I'll just tell you guys anyways. Um, interestingly enough, the last scene, or one of the last scenes, of course, is when Tony passes. Okay, and we got to talk about that for a minute. But when we talk about scenes, when we talk about, I'll get to what I was going to say in a minute. When we talk about scenes, when we talk about visuals, when we talk about moments, you think all those moments that I just have been talking about for the last 15 or 20 minutes would be it, the culmination. This goes to show you this is peak Marvel. What were the last four words he said at the end of Iron Man? I am Iron. So when Thanos is about ready to do his thing, and he says, I am inevitable. And he goes, snaps his fingers, and there's nothing there. And then he looks over, and then Tony, as you can see, has the gauntlet. And he says, and I am Iron Man. Peak. Peak Marvel. You won't get this. It's going to take at least another decade. Honestly, it's going to take at least another decade for them to be able to get up to that point. It really is. And boy, what a tough bar to climb. It will never make as much money. It would have to be, I mean, you're talking 2035, maybe. And it would have to be an event like that. But we'll see. So all those events were just, and they were back to back to back to back to back. And that just goes to show you how good this really was. I mean, truth be told, I always thought, okay, it's a heist movie. And yeah, it is to a certain extent, it is a heist movie. But when you really do a deep dive into it and talk about the closure and talk about the character arcs and talk about the emotion, it's an incredible, incredible movie. And by the way, you got to give all the credit in the world to the screenwriters. because they're juggling all these things. Okay, they're juggling Black Panther. Well, they were juggling, Infinity War. They're juggling this. So McFeely, um, Stephen McFeely, and the other screenwriter just did a remarkable job. Um, and you know they they hit a home run. And by the way, one last thing I'll say before we wrap this up is this: Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely. One last thing I'm going to say is this: there is a commonality, okay, throughout all of these movies I've been talking about for the past hour, okay, and that is they've all been directed by the Russos, okay, whether it was Winter Soldier, whether it was Civil War, whether it was Infinity War, or whether it was Endgame. I personally believe that the Russos saved they saved the MCU with Winter Soldier. If because you got to remember something, Thor: The Dark World had just come out in 2008 or 2014. I'm sorry, it was 2014, and Thor: The Dark World had just come out, and it didn't do so hot. That being said, had the next Marvel movie come out and it was not good, because they had just come off the success of the Avengers a couple years earlier. If the Russos don't come out, and by the way, nobody knew who they were. They directed You, Me, and Dupree. Okay. That being said, they got together with the screenwriters, and that was the other thing too: consistency. Those screenwriters I named, they were consistent throughout. But if Winter Soldier isn't the absolute perfect movie, it is. We're not talking about this 7 years later. We're not. I'm sorry. Because from the success of Winter Soldier, they got Civil War. And from that success of Civil War, they got Infinity War. Okay? They get Endgame. So the Russos saved the MCU, hands down. I believe that wholeheartedly. Because I don't think that Jonathan Favreau could have directed this. I don't think anybody could have done this. I don't. And this is what we got. We got emotion. We got action. Everything got paid off. And we got to see our heroes live, in live action, right? So I think the Russo saved the MCU. That's just me personally. So, but okay, guys, that is Avengers Infinity War. I'm sorry, Endgame. I always want to call it Infinity War. I don't know. The more I will say one thing. I had always thought for the longest time that Infinity War was a better film than Endgame. I still think it is, but not by much. I thought it was leaps and bounds better. Now that I'm going back and I did a deep dive into it, it really held up. It's not as good as Infinity War, okay? But it is damn good. And I think that there's something to be said about that. Thank you very much, Deadpool. So yeah, so that is Endgame. So a couple of things, guys. As I said earlier, okay, I am going to be doing. This isn't the last one for Marvel March, guys. Don't. I know today is the 17th, and I know I have been putting out a lot, guys. But I want you to know that this is not the last one, so do not worry. I just started watching. Okay, I just started watching Civil War. I've got about an hour and a half left on that, and then I'm going to start. I'm going to start my analysis on that. Okay, my goal, if I don't, I'll tell you what. If I don't do another live stream tonight, which it is 3:30, so we're going to see. I will definitely pre-record it, and you guys will get it later this week. Okay, that's first and foremost. So you guys are going to be getting Civil War. You guys are going to be getting Winter Soldier, No Way Home, and the Avengers for the rest of the month. Okay, those 4 movies. So that is March. April, I've already told you what the perfect movie is going to be, and that's The Departed. I've already got draft day up for you guys. I'm going to watch Collateral. I've already got 2 or 3 other movies that I've already got lined up for you guys. I can't wait to sit down and watch them. Endgame is still one of my favorite MCU movies. Robert Downey Jr. gives his best performance as Tony Stark and Iron Man here as well. The I Love You 3000 moment always makes me emotional. Real hero for sure. Yeah. And that's what it did. That's what they did so well in this movie was they didn't play on your emotion. It was just the simple fact it was paid off. I would love to know if that was improvised or not. Because if McFeely and they actually wrote that in, they're geniuses. They're geniuses. Because that doesn't seem like something to me you're just gonna write in. But then again, I could be wrong. So the last thing I wanted to touch upon before I get into everything else is actually a little side note. The scene with the funeral at the end, after Tony dies, right? And we see the little thing go into the water, and we see, I would have loved to have seen the call sheet for this, but everybody of the past 11 years standing there, from Nick Fury to Carol to, the Guardians to everybody else, on the call sheet, because they didn't want to give it away, that was actually called the wedding. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. That was actually called the wedding. Of course, it was Tony's funeral. But, anyways, that was just a little tidbit. But yeah, guys, April's going to be stacked. Okay. So here's what I'm going to ask. And you guys are just, thank you so much again for everything. You just made my heart just warmed up extremely. Seeing that actually makes me, not only does it feel good, but know that my hard work is paying off. So, but I want to talk to everybody quickly about memberships. Okay. Now you say, oh, I want to leave because they're talking about money. No, 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 no. Relax. Relax. Here's the thing. I want to put this up full screen because I want you guys to see this. Look at the price. It's nothing. It's free. It's absolutely free. Okay? Here's what I'm saying to everybody that watches this, even if you pop in for a couple of minutes. Okay? Just hear me out. Give me 2 minutes of your time, and then if you don't like it, that's fine. This channel, okay, is all entertainment based and whatever else. But what I've done for you guys is because I know money is tight for everybody, especially for me. Okay, I'm a working guy. This is a side hustle for me. I've made this extremely, extremely cheap for you guys. Okay, and that being said, the first month is completely free. Okay, what I say to you guys is this. Okay, in all honesty, if you join for the first month, it's not going to cost you a dime. If you don't like the content, if you don't like what I'm putting out, whether it's Marvel March stuff or the retrospectives or anatomy of a movie or the perfect movie series or whatever it is, okay, you don't have to stay a member because I don't want to take your money. But if you do like what I'm talking about, if you do like the content, if you do like the videos, if you do like the live streams, what I'd ask is that you become a member. And what that does is two things. Number one, it supports me, and I thank you very much for becoming a channel member today. Okay. And number two, it shows me you like the content. Okay. But not only that, guys, I want to give you the absolute best content I can, hands down, every single time. Okay. And I've made it as cheap as I possibly can for you guys. Okay. And that all being said, okay, become a member, stay a member. Okay. And I'm never going to pressure anybody to stay a member, okay? But I do have goals for this. Excuse me, I do have goals for this channel. First goal is I want to hit 2,000 subs by the end of the year. Hashtag road to 2,000. Number two, I want to have 15 to 20 paid subs by the end of the year, okay? And I think that's completely doable, okay? I want to have this become a full-time gig. This is a side hustle right now. And once again, guys, I'm sorry that I haven't put out any videos for the past week. I know you guys, you're subscribed and everything else, and I want to give you guys the best stuff I can. I've just been working trying to make rent and everything else. Um, but seriously, it's going to help me out a lot. So become a member. Okay. If you don't like what you see, if you don't feel like you're getting your money's worth in the first month, it's not going to cost you anything. But if you do, continue to become a member. Continue to be a member. And I will provide you guys with the absolute best content. Look at it like this, guys. Here's another thing to keep in mind. Netflix just raised its prices. Okay. Hulu's about to start cracking down on passwords. So in case you have anybody on your membership, okay, they're going to start cracking down. Okay. Netflix is, as I said, Netflix HBO Max for itself is $9.99 with ads. I'm giving you, if you decide to become a member at the director level, $10 a month, and I thank you very much if you do. Okay. Every single thing you're getting, every single video you're getting is not behind a paywall. Think about that. Every single one. Okay. Every single video, whether it's anatomy of a movie, whether it's a retrospectives, whether it's perfect movies, they're not behind a paywall. Okay. And that's incredibly important because I want to provide you guys with the best entertainment possible. So I want to leave it at that. But there is a ton of stuff. There is a ton more stuff coming up for the month of March. Okay. I've already gone through the list. You guys are already aware of what the April Perfect movie is going to be. A couple of the movies there. And this stuff's going to start to come out. Okay. It is going to start to come out. So I want to thank everybody that, that first and foremost stayed with me for an hour and 20 minutes because you guys are warriors. Okay. But everybody that popped in here and at least watched for a little bit. Okay. I hope you enjoyed the analysis. This is what I do with these movies. And guys, if you have any questions, hit me up on X. I don't like using X, but I mean, hit me up on Twitter. That is my screen name. Okay. Search for me, follow me. I'm always in there talking about movies, in spaces about movies, doing spaces about movies. And I have on guests, occasionally on there and here. So that's going to do it for today. And when this is going to be exporting and I'm going to take care of all that, my goal is to sit down and watch Civil War. If I don't stream tonight, I will definitely do a pre-recorded video and I will make sure you guys get this within the next few days. So that all being said, there are 3 things, guys, that you need to do every single day, and you know what they are. Number 1 is be safe. Number 2 is be careful. Number 3, guys, be good to one another. Okay, take care of yourself. I'm David Steele. This is Real Talks, and have a good day.